So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how do we find these things called Q1 and the median and Q3, okay, to actually generate our 5-number summary. And we're going to utilize this data from bowling team 2 broken up into its quartiles. Okay, so we've got these, the data here is from our bowling team 2 scores, broken up into these quartiles, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to use the top and bottom values for the quartiles, okay, in order to find what we call Q1, the median, and Q3. Okay, so this actually ends up being really, really handy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say, okay, well, I notice here that this one, the top, the largest value in quartile 1 is 150, and the smallest value in quartile 2 is 150. Okay, so those are the two values that I have there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to find something called Q1, and Q1 is the 25th percentile. So it's going to be right in between those two values. Okay, so it's the 25th percentile, and it's going to be right in between those two values. So, okay, so we're going to start there. And so our Q1, right, is going to equal the top end of quartile 1 plus the bottom end of quartile 2, and then we're going to divide it by 2. So it's like a cutoff. It's going to end up being the cutoff, and so that ends up equaling 150. It just so happens that's how our data is set up. You guys see that? Take a look at your data. That's what we're doing. We're going to add those two together and divide it by 2. Okay? All right. The next one I'm going to do is I'm now going to find my median. And my median is also the 50th percentile. Okay? And it's the midway point between the data. And it's the midpoint between the data. And so we've actually done this before with this data. Okay? So we'll go down to, we've got bowling team 2. And this one's now going to be, if we look here, it's going to be the one between quartile 2 and quartile 3. Because quartile 2 is 25 to 50%, and quartile 3 is 50 to 75%. So we're going to take this top end of quartile 2 and the bottom end of quartile 3, okay, 200 and 200, right, okay. So that's going to be, right, it'll end up being 200, won't it? So let's do that, where our median is going to be the average of those two. So that's going to be 200 plus 200 divided by 2. 50% of the data, which is 200. So now, 50% of the data is going to be on one side of 200, and 50% of the data is going to be on the other side of 200. That's just what's going to happen. And actually, if you look at your data set, let's take a look at that. Okay.
So will you say that the median is the quartile 2?
No, I will say that the median is the median. There's no such thing as Q2, you mean. There's no Q2. Q1 is the 25th percentile. Q3, when we get to there, is going to be the 75th percentile, and the median is the 50th percentile. There's no Q2. You don't call it that. So if you look here, right, this is 50% of the data is on this side, okay? And 50% of the data is also on this side, okay? There you go, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to find something called Q3, and Q3 is going to be the 75th percentile. So that's going to be this guy, 245, plus 250. Oh, now finally they're different, okay? And then we're going to divide those by 2, and that's going to be my 75th percentile, okay? Just give me one moment. I do know that. It's important. These notes are going out to our online compatriots as well. So I want to make sure I write it all down. So there it is, and that's 247.5. So 75% of the data is going to be less than 247.5. There it is. Okay? What do you think? I took the bottom end of quartile 2, or excuse me, the bottom end of quartile 3, plus it's actually the top end of quartile 3, right? The highest value in quartile 3, okay? Right there, that 245. And the lowest end of quartile 4, and I averaged the two of them together, right? Okay, to find out what the cutoff was in between this. So if you think about it, 247.5 is right in between, it's right in the middle of those two numbers, right? That's the concept that we're dealing with here. That's the true concept of a percentile. The 75th percentile here is bigger than 75% of the data. So if 247.5 is the 75th percentile, okay, then it is truly bigger than 75% of the data. 30 out of 40 data points is less than 247.5. You see that? Yes, Xavier.
So median is basically quartile 2?
No, the median is the 50th percentile. Quartile 2 is 25 to 50% of the data, right? They're two different things. We call something Q1 is the cutoff for quartile 1, Q3 is the cutoff for quartile 3, and the median is the cutoff for quartile 2.
And there is also no quartile 4?
No, there is a quartile 4. Right, hold on one moment. I'm going to cut my... So there are two more important bits of information that we're going to need here. We're also going to need something called the maximum. And we'll need the minimum. So the maximum is the maximum data value in the set. Okay? And the minimum is the minimum data value in the set. So if we go here to the maximum, we're going to look. What's our maximum data value? 300. Good. What's the minimum data value? 70. All right. Check in. Everybody understand how we found that? Maximum means biggest, right? Biggest, maximum, largest, highest. Good. Minimum, lowest, smallest, least, whatever you want to call it. Okay? So my maximum here is going to be 300, and my minimum is now going to be 70. Okay? What we've generated right here is something called the 5-number summary. All right? That's called the 5-number summary. What is the 5-number summary? It's these 5 values. So the 5-number summary is literally, and we write it in this order, minimum, Q1, median, Q3, and the maximum. And there it is. And so for this particular data set, for bowling team 1, okay, for bowling team 1, what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, well, the minimum was 70. Q1 we had was 150. The median was 200. Q3 was 247.5. And then the max was 300. And that's your 5-number summary.